We'll begin from ayah 175. إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. That is only shaitan who frightens you. Frightens you of who? Of his awliya, of his supporters. So what does Allah advise us? That do not fear them, instead fear who? Allah. If you should be believers. Meaning, if you are believers, then you must fear Allah alone, and not the people that shaitan frightens you of. Now this ayah is the continuation of the previous ones, in which we learned that when the Prophet ﷺ returned to Medina after the Battle of Uhud, he feared that Abu Sufyan and his men would return, and they would attack Medina again. Or rather, they would come to attack Medina in order to kill the rest of the Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ announced in the morning that all those who participated at Uhud are required to come out again. And the believers who were exhausted, who were wounded, who were injured, who had hands that were paralyzed, they got up and they went along with the Prophet ﷺ in pursuit of the enemy. And as they left Medina, what happened? They met a man who came, Nu'aym. He came and he frightened the Muslims that Abu Sufyan is coming with his army. But what was the reaction of the companions when they heard the description of Abu Sufyan and his army? What was their reaction? What did they say? Hasbunallah. Allah is enough for us. We can do this. It doesn't matter if the mushrikeen inflicted a great harm on us yesterday. It doesn't matter. We're not going to give up. And this is the way of the believer. That no matter what he suffers, what is important, what is necessary, he does it. Even if he feels he will fail at it. Even if he feels he does not have the strength to face it. Because again, who is he relying upon? Himself? His own strength? No. He relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why he says, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. What an excellent trustee he is. Meaning he is the perfect one to rely on. So when Nu'aym, he came and he frightened the Muslims, they reacted very positively. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals concerning that إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. That person who came trying to frighten you was who? Shaitan. Well, he was a human being, so how was he shaitan? Remember, shayateen are from both men as well as jinn. The devils are from the people and they're also from the jinn. Meaning, some devils are in the form of human beings that we see, we interact with, and some devils are in the form of jinn that we cannot see, but they only whisper into our hearts. Okay? And when is it that a human being is a shaitan? A human being is a shaitan when he does the work of shaitan. When he does what the shayateen do. What do shayateen do? What's the role of shaitan? To stop people from obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever means that he adopts, what's his goal? To stop a person from being obedient to Allah. So when a person comes and frightens the other, oh, you cannot do this. Or he discourages the other, don't do this. You'll fail. You'll badly fail. When a person discourages another, frightens the other from doing a good deed, then he is doing the work of who? Shaitan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls that person shaitan. So remember that shaitan will not just attack you through words that he whispers into your heart, through thoughts that he will put into your mind. No. Shaitan will also use people to attack you. So you would be doing something really good, and all of a sudden, somebody comes and humiliates you, yells at you, insults you, which discourages you from ever doing that work again. So for example, you decide that the next party you're going to, if it's, let's say, a wedding, and it's mixed, but it's relatives, and you have to go, there's no way of getting out, you decide that I'm going to go, and I'm going to keep my hijab on. And as you're sitting there, some auntie or some person, they come to you and they're like, what are you wearing? Come on, take this off. You're at a wedding, not at a masjid. Why do you have this on? Show us your beautiful hair. And please, this is not going to work over here. And they go on and on and on. And you start crying. And you feel so sad and so hurt that you're like, never again am I going to wear hijab in public. You know what? Shaitan became victorious over there. Shaitan tried to stop you by putting this thought in your head before you left. Oh, come on, you're actually going to keep the hijab on at that party? Shaitan tried to stop you, but you're like, no, I am going to keep it on. But then when you went, Shaitan didn't stop there. What did he do? He sent a human being against you. So Shaitan doesn't leave you. He keeps coming to you directly and also through other human beings. So be alert. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us, إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ. This is Shaitan who comes to you, frightens you. And over here in this context, what happened? يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ. يُخَوِّفُ is from takhweef. It is to frighten someone, to make someone afraid. So he was instilling the fear in your hearts of who? أَوْلِيَاءَهُ, of his friends. Who are the friends of Shaitan? In the context refers to Abu Sufyan and his army, who were coming back in order to attack the Muslims. So Shaitan was frightening you of his friends, that you become afraid of facing them. That you feel you are incapable of fighting them, of dealing with them. So you give up and you retreat, or you give up, you abandon the Prophet ﷺ, you abandon your mission. يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ. Allah says, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ. You don't need to fear them. So what does this mean? That no matter how great the challenge is, no matter how great the enemy is, no matter how strong the person is who is insulting you, still, what does Allah say? Do not fear them. Instead, who should you fear? وَخَافُونِي. Fear me. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you should be believers. So there are a number of things that we learn in this ayah. First of all, we see the enmity and the hatred of Shaitan for the believer. That he does not spare any effort. He comes himself and he sends people against the believer. And especially what does Shaitan do? He instills the fear of what we have to do in our hearts. That he makes righteousness, he makes the performance of good deeds so frightening that we don't even think about doing it. I have a question for you. Has anyone asked you, have you memorized the Qur'an? Do you want to memorize the Qur'an? Or have you asked this question yourself? Yeah? But what comes into your heart? This fear. I can't do it. There's no way. I can't do it. Not at all. I barely remember the short surahs of the Qur'an. How can I even memorize the entire Qur'an? This is something that I can't do. My memory is really bad. I'm already, 20 years old. If I had done it at 8, then I would have been able to. Now I'm 20, so now, I've lost my chance. I cannot memorize the Qur'an. Does this fear come into your heart? Yes, it does. Shaitan frightens us. He makes us feel that righteousness is so difficult, doing something good is impossible. So that we don't even think about doing it. And the little good that we're doing, we stop that as well. Many times it happens that we have great ideas or great intentions that we want to do something good. But then somebody comes and tells us, really, you think you can make a change? You think you can actually do this? And we start doubting ourselves. We start questioning ourselves. It's not possible. We can't do it. And then we give up. There's so many good things that people begin, that they start doing, whether it's a good project, or a small class, or something, good in their personal life. But then very soon it falls apart. Have you heard? A halaqah started there and it finished. A person started a project and then it collapsed. Why it collapsed? Why it finished? Because when you do something good, definitely there are challenges. Definitely there are difficulties. But one is that you become frightened of those difficulties, and the other is that you face them and you deal with them. Shaitan makes us afraid, but please don't be afraid. There's nothing that human beings can do, which is within their capacity, that is impossible. Always think that if other people can do it, I can do it too. It's not impossible. And especially in this day and age, there's so many things that people have accomplished. So when others can accomplish, why can't we? We can also do that. Let me give you an example. This building that you're sitting in, Before this building, we had a very, very small Al-Huda center in Mississauga. I'm talking about maybe half of this hall. The total size of that. Perhaps half of this hall. Okay? We had a hall, and we had a small washroom, with 3 stalls in it, and very small office, and a very small area for the computers, and so on and so forth. It was a very, very small center. And at that time, we couldn't even think about a bigger center, a bigger building. And when we walked into this building to see it, when I came here, I remember thinking that, how is it possible? How can we ever afford this building? And even if we do get this building, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with it? So the initial thought was, it's not possible. We're dreaming too big. We're thinking too big. So let's downsize. Let's think realistic. But alhamdulillah, the strong determination of other people, the trust that they had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of that, they made the decision and they're like, no, we are going to go for it. And alhamdulillah, within a couple of months, literally $2.2 million were raised. Yes. And this was without having a fundraiser every other day. No. So quickly, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came. So one is that we become frightened and we're like, it's not possible, we can't do it. And the other is that you say, no, hasbunallah. Allah is enough for us. Not the money of this person and not the work of that person and not the help of that person. No, Allah is enough for us. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. So always, whenever you are doing something good, whether it is, as small as praying salah or reading a page of the Quran or fasting or forgiving someone or speaking the truth or initiating the salam or responding to someone gently, whatever it is, always say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem first. That, oh Allah, protect me from the evil of shaitan, from his frightening me, from his attempts to scare me. Give me the confidence. And you can only have the confidence when you turn to Allah. It happens with many people that when they become serious about doing something for the sake of Allah, initially there's a lot of opposition in every respect. From close family members, from friends, financially. There's so many struggles that you have to endure. But once you make up your mind and you say, oh Allah, I want to do this and you are enough for me, then Allah will pave the way for you. And you will see that the result is more than what you could even imagine. The end product is better than you can even expect. This building, we thought, how are we going to use it? And now, you know what situation we're in, that we have to have classes in the masjid, in the men's section. We have to kick the men out and we have to tell them we need the space. We don't know what to do, how to function in this little space which seemed so much before. Because ultimately, who is the provider? Who is your caretaker? Allah is. So when you turn to Him, He will take care of you. But like we learned earlier, Allah is going to help, but you have to ask Him. You have to prove yourself worthy of His help. You have to do something on your part as well. The companions didn't just sit in Medina saying that we're tired, we can't go. No, they got up and they left and the help of Allah came. So you have to do your part as well. And notice over here, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِي. Another important lesson we learn over here is that we must not fear shaitan, his friends, people, the challenges that come our way. No, we must not fear them. And as a result of that, leave the good work we're doing. Instead, we should fear who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in other words, when the fear of Allah is there, then the fear of people subsides. When the fear of Allah is more, then the fear of people becomes less. Then it becomes small, and eventually it goes away. But what's the condition? That the fear of Allah should be there. And how can a person develop fear of Allah? When he compares the power of Allah to the power of people. What are people before Allah? Nothing. When a person realizes that Allah is greater, when a person realizes that people are small, that what they have is limited. When people have power over you, you can escape. But when Allah is questioning you, then you can never escape. If people want to harm you, you can be saved. But when Allah intends harm for you, you can never escape. Never ever. So, وَخَافُونِي, fear me, in kuntum mu'mineen, if you should be believers.